Hello, welcome to Asian Flicks, where we retell stories about Asian movies. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to this channel. Disclaimer, spoiler alert. Today we will watch a movie that explores the concept of insomnia and its effects on the human mind. The film starts with a university student attempting suicide by jumping from the top of a building. Despite efforts by lecturers and security guards to save the student, he eventually jumps. Professor Nietzsche, a sleep specialist, explains that insomnia is a mental disorder and can lead to extreme symptoms such as hallucinations and hearing strange voices, when a patient has been sleep-deprived for an extended period. The scene then shifts to Jane, a student living with her grandmother and sister, who is obsessively concerned with the safety of her house. She suffers from insomnia and often stays up studying or going to the market to buy cooking ingredients for her grandmother's business. When Jane receives a letter about late payment of her house, she plans to drop out of college and find a job to pay off her debt. Professor Nietzsche suggests working as a lab assistant, but Jane sees it as a waste of time due to low pay. Hearing that, the professor advises her to participate in a research program from a German company that pays large sums to volunteers. The director of the German company, Hans Miller, explains that the experiment they are conducting, called DEEP, which involves 3 levels where participants are asked to stay awake for several days to produce a hormone called crotonin. The hormone can be used to treat patients with brain death, and the more concentrated crotonin produced, the more payouts the participants receive. However, participants must not sleep for more than 60 seconds, or they risk dying. Jane, with all her debt and financial problems, decides to participate in the DEEP experiment for a large payment. Jane receives a small chip that will take the hormone in her brain and a special watch to monitor her heart rate and crotonin level. She must not sleep for more than 60 seconds or she will die. On the first day, Jane's hormone level is at 41%, and she sees her grandmother apparently lying on the floor but actually searching for her denture. She helps her grandmother and continues with the experiment. The next day, while Jane is having lunch in the cafeteria, she meets other participants: Win, who loves partying and hardly sleeps; Sin, a famous beauty blogger who forced by her parents to study medicine; and Peach, a nerdy gamer who lives in online games. The 4 exchange contact and support each other during the experiment. Eventually, their watches show 100%, indicating level 1 has been completed. They return to the lab to get the chip out and receive the payment, which they use for various purposes such as going to salon, buy game consoles, and watches. On the other hand, Jane used the money to buy her sister June a new phone and pay off some of her debts. They also create a group chat called Non Non, which translates to no sleep, to celebrate their success. Encouraged by the money, the 4 friends decide to continue with level 2, which lasts longer than level 1, allowing them to produce more concentrated crotonin. They initially hesitate upon hearing the explanation from Hans, but are swayed by the increasing amount of money involved, and eventually agree to participate. At the beginning, they went on with their lives as usual, but on the 3rd day, Win becomes dizzy and loses control of his emotions. He hit one of his friends after being provoked by a mocking voice. June starts to question how her sister earned a lot of money in a short period of time. Jane also experiences side effects, including insomnia and hallucinations. During a hangout session, Jane notices that Win's crotonin percentage is higher than the others, leading them to realize that they need to do more physical activities to produce crotonin faster. They began to party at Peach's house, swimming, drinking, and even resorting to taking drugs to stay awake. The drugs made them dance like crazy, and Jane, who has lost her mind, starts approaching Win and they start to make out. Meanwhile, Sin, who was in the bathroom, accidentally heard some strange noises coming from Peach's room, and how surprised she was to find out that Peach was her stalker this whole time. Sin went into shock and she eventually started to lose consciousness. Peach is luckily nearby and then calls Jane and Win. They tried to provide first aid and they managed to bring Sin back to life. At the same time, their crotonin level has reached 100%. After Sin has a near-death experience, the group decides to quit the experiment. Not long after, Jane grandma suffers a stroke, and she finds out her sister's involvement in DEEP. She then told June not to participate with DEEP ever again. Feeling uneasy, Jane visits the lab to meet Hans and learn Hans has implanted a chip into June's neck. Hans threatens to leave the chip in place unless June and the others participate in level 3. Feeling desperate, Jane begged the group members to participate and help her sister. At the beginning, Sin and Peach refuse, but, due to sense of indebtedness to Jane, they agree to participate. The group asks Professor Nietzsche to help them stay awake until the end of the experiment. Professor then gives them Exerol liquid every day so they wouldn't fall asleep and tells Jane to contact her immediately if anything happens to them. The first, second, and third day go smoothly without any problems, but by the sixth day, they start to feel heavy under their eyes and have hallucinations. Peach has difficulty distinguishing reality and seeing the game battlefield in reality, while Sin sees huge pimples on her face. Win thinks his deceased mother is calling him, and Jane sees her sister having a seizure. They become sensitive towards each other, and Peach starts to punch Win. The situation escalates and they get into a fight, blaming each other for their hallucinations and other problems they are experiencing due to the Level 3 experiment. Jane tries to contact Professor Nietzsche for help, but she realizes that Professor Nietzsche is watching them all this time, and the mastermind behind the deep experiment. She tries to call the police. However, the signal from their cell phone suddenly disappears, and the room they are in is locked. Sin gets emotional, and destroys all the CCTV cameras in the room. Then, Win suddenly begins to lose consciousness until he dies. Professor Nietzsche takes Win out of the room and extracts his microchip, but after taking it out, Win suddenly comes back to life and attacks the professor. It turns out, the secret behind his survival was he had faked his death by purposely inducing a temporary cardiac arrest. They manage to corner Professor Nietzsche and learn that the reason she did the experiment is an attempt to revive her brain-dead lover, who is the student that jumped off the roof at the start of the film. Suddenly, the professor injects Jane with an anesthetic causing her to become limp and unconscious, leading to fears of her dying by the 60 seconds rule. In the meantime, the professor still tried to stab Peach with syringe, and when she nearly succeed, Sin hits her with a keyboard and causing her to pass out. The rest try to resuscitate Jane but fail. When all hope fails, June hit her in the chest and Jane miraculously started breathing again. Professor Nietzsche was then arrested by the police, and all the students taking part in Deep had their chips removed. The group then reunited with their families and friends. The experience helped them realize the value of life and the importance of living it according to their own desires. They started to live normally, sleeping regularly and pursuing their own dreams. That's all for today's movie. Thank you for your support. If you enjoyed this, please consider like and subscribe to our channel. We will be back with more great Asian flicks soon, stay tuned.